Good evening, everyone. It's Dr. McCoy, and it's time for our Thursday gathering. It's 7 o'clock. That's when we gather, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'm delighted that you are here. As we see the green background, please remember, if you don't already know, the green background means that I'm going to talk to you. So this is the talk on this evening as we have really lived through the month of May. Now we have, one more day? Yes, I believe so. So, no, 2 more days. Today is March 29th, 2025, and we are still in Mental Health Awareness Month. So as we journey to the end of this month, I just wanted to be sure to give us a bit more information as we know that mental health is important year round, but this time of the year is just really heightening people's awareness to the importance of mental health and caring for our minds. Good evening to you. I see you all, Miss Michelle, Miss Brenda saying good evening to me, good evening to you. Now, if you happen to have a question at any time, you can stop me and ask that question. Just type it. And if you're joining a little later, that's okay too, because I'll still look and I'll see your comments and your questions and I will respond. All right. So May, Mental Health Awareness Month. We need to know that in 2025, the theme for Mental Health Awareness Month is turn awareness into action. Turn awareness into action. So it's not enough to be aware, to talk about it, but we need to talk about the actions that need to follow our awareness. So then that's what I want to talk about on this evening. How can you turn awareness of mental health into action? So this theme is really, it was designed to create really or celebrate the progress that we've made in recognizing that mental health is important in the first place. So we've really made a lot of progress. People are talking about mental health more in churches. They're talking about mental health more in faith communities. They're talking about mental health more in their families, and they are seeking mental health help for themselves. So give everybody a hand clap. Good job. And we are continuing to build on what we know and to build on how to take action. So what do? How do we take action? Well, I've talked to us before about taking care of ourselves, and that's really important. But then sometimes we wonder what we can do on behalf of those whom we care about. What do we even say if we feel that someone we love, someone we care about, is facing a mental health challenge? What do we say? So you notice that there are troubling signs. You notice that those troubling signs, they may indicate that your friend or your loved one is going through something. So then what do you say? How do you talk to them about what they're dealing with? How do you talk to someone about seeking mental health help? How do you get into the conversation? Since we're talking about turning awareness into action, I want to share some things that I read even recently. The first thing that you would need to do, that I would need to do if I notice some troubling signs that may indicate that my friend or my loved one is going through something, I'll ask. I know that is really a big step to ask, because in some communities, it would be considered as being nosy. The response may be, it's none of your business. So we may fear rejection if we were to ask, but we can reach out and ask if the person is doing okay. Are you okay? Those could be some of the most challenging words to ask someone. Are you okay? But we want to make sure that when we ask this question that we're not accusing or blaming them for our observation. Are you okay? Because to me, it seems like there's something wrong with you. Are you okay? Because to me, you're not behaving like you used to. That seems like an accusation. So we don't ask in that way. A good way to do this instead is to use I statements that are safe. For example, instead of saying, are you okay? Because you just don't do what I want. That's an I statement almost, but not in that way. Something like, for example, you never hang out with us anymore. Why is that? Or I've missed hanging out with you recently. That might be a better way to say it. I miss reaching out or hanging out with you. Is everything okay? But be direct. Be direct, but don't be a person who is blasting accusations towards your friend or your loved one. Being hesitant is not a good thing, because really, when you don't address the concern, it can make it seem like a taboo topic, like it's wrong to ask someone if they're okay. Sometimes people are waiting for us to ask. Now, I'm going to talk about that a little more when I mention some things in this book, Loving Our Own Bones. A colleague of mine just gave this to me on yesterday. I was working out in Kentucky. So if I my words are a bit lost upon me, it's because I flew in and I arrived home at about 2 a.m. this morning. So I've had some sleep, but not a whole lot of it. But my colleague, when I was out in Kentucky, gifted me a copy of this book. And it's really interesting because I knew what I wanted to share with you on this evening. And when I started reading some of the content of this book, it helped me to grow beyond some of my own thinking and even some of the other things that I've read. So I said ask. How do you talk about it? Ask. But then I'm going to go to this book, so I won't forget. But I just wanted to throw that in there. So you ask. So this not asking and not having the conversation, just again, it really helps us to think that mental health is a taboo topic. It should be as simple as talking about the weather. Okay? So don't contribute to the stigma that can prevent people from getting the help they need. Just ask. You know, you don't hang out with us much anymore. Are you okay? The next thing I can do, is listen. I know many of us say, oh, I already know that one. Of course, I need to listen to people if I'm going to, have a conversation or what to say when considering turning awareness into action. Of course, I need to listen. Well, listening is the most important part in a way that gives attention, because a lot of people say they listen, but what do? They're on their phones. Have you ever talked with someone, or you're saying something and they're on their phone, or they're looking at their watch? You can tell that they are preoccupied. Now, they may be like me and arrived at the airport, early in the morning and didn't go to bed until about 2 a.m. But if you're going to bring up, this idea that, you have concerns about a person's mental health, you need to do it at a time where you can be an active listener. You need to give them your full attention, and you need to be empathetic, meaning that you put yourself in their shoes. Doesn't mean that you're going to understand everything they say. That's not the same thing. Empathy simply means I'm sitting with you in this, and I'm acknowledging how you feel. And even if the person, even if you've never experienced the same thing, again, empathy is about I'm here with you in this moment as we journey through this conversation about your mental health, your mental wellness. And so sharing information may be appropriate at that time, where you're not doing all the talking, but you are offering something. I can tell you that the toolkit for 2025, the mental health toolkit, has really helped me a lot for myself and for how I deal with others and how I assist others, because people reach out to me about things and I'm able to pull from different resources and I can share that. So listening is about that, to where I'm not listening to respond necessarily, to say, oh, I know what I read and I'm going to give this to you as soon as you finish talking. Not in that way, but listening can be powerful because that person is sharing information, and it can be an empowering tool even for them. And for me, if they ask me, what do you think? Do you have anything that can maybe help me? But I have to listen before I try to assist. So that's the second thing. So first, ask. Talking about turning awareness of mental health into action concerning mental health. So the first thing, again, is to ask, and then to listen, and then encourage. Now, not talking about the preacher encourage, McCoy. Not talking about that. No, not going to be preachy right now. Not talking about the preachy encourage. No, that's not what I mean. Whether it's talking to family, whether it's about talking to other friends, that's the type of encouragement that I'm talking about. Not the type of encouragement where we rush people out of their feelings. Everybody's not great with mental health work because they're not comfortable with feelings. they are more comfortable with talking people out of their feelings and telling them that they ought not feel that way. You know, you ought to be grateful. You know, you're really blessed. You know, you need to get out of that rut. You know, people are used to hearing encourage in that way, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about encouraging your friend or your loved one to take action. And that action may not mean escaping from this moment right now. It may mean how to manage the fact that this moment is something permanent in my life. Because if my mental health is attached to a medical condition that's not going to change, then I'm going to need to learn how to more so manage that. I don't need you to encourage me and talk me out of it because it's my reality. May not be yours, but I'm going to sit with this for the rest of my life. And some conditions are that way. So encourage, all right? So ask, listen, encourage, and then lastly, check in. Checking in with a person. Letting them know that you're there to help. Letting them know that you're there to help and that they can talk to you anytime. Even if they're not ready to talk right now, you're going to make yourself available. And if you get brushed off, you understand, you know, even that first time that you're not going to give up. You're just going to be present, whatever that looks like. People shouldn't be on our time table. You know, it shouldn't be where you ought to be ready to talk to me now, you know, because I know what Dr. McCoy said about what I need to say. And I get to say when it's time for me to ask. And I get to say when it's time for me to listen. And I get to say when it's time for me to encourage. And then I check in with you and you better answer. No, that's not what support looks like. That's not what it looks like. And these things take practice. I'm not telling you that I'm great at all these things. Sometimes people are talking to me and I'm listening and I'm so, encouraged in a way to do something that I have to slow myself down. Because what if while they're talking to me, they don't want me to do anything at all but actively listen to them? So in my excitement, I ought to learn better how to get excited about listening. Not about solving, but about listening. So that's what these steps are about. And we have to know that if our friend or our loved one is not ready to talk about what they're experiencing, it's okay in the sense that I'm not forcing them to talk. I'm still going to be here. I'm going to make it clear that I'm support and be ready again when they reach out. That's important. So then how do you provide support? And I'm going to get to my book in just a minute, but how do you provide support? Okay, so before I get to that, I want to talk about how many of us presume things in the lives of other people. Like we immediately know, like I offer those things of what to say, but then we immediately know how to support. We presume that this is what the person needs, and we assume that we did what's proper after we've taken action. So when thinking about this theme of turning awareness into action, I want to talk about how we have to be very careful to hear other voices. I know we mean well, but when we provide support, sometimes we say, okay, I've had this candid conversation with this person. I've actively listened. I've offered support. So what does, or I've offered this idea of how to engage the conversation by listening and encouraging and asking. I've done that, and now I know how to support them. So this is what I'm going to do. For example, I'm going to pray for them. And when I go visit them wherever, my tool is prayer, and I'm a Christian, so I'm going to pray for them. That's what I'm going to do. That's how I offer support. Well, they want to know, who doesn't want prayer? After all, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to go in here with a list of questions. How are you today? You know, what's the best way I can support you? Let me pray for you. Okay, let's get to the book. If we want to truly help people, and if we really believe that there is a way to meet people where they are, we are going to need to continue to humble ourselves to read the realities of people who don't look like us, people who don't talk like us, people who view mental health in very different ways. I don't know if you noticed, but when I'm presenting something, I'm not presenting it in a way to tell you I'm right and this is just the way you ought to, this is what you ought to, you ought to replace your thoughts for mine. That's not what I'm doing. I'm offering information so that we can have courageous conversations, so that you can ask me questions, I can ask you questions, and we can learn and grow together. Don't I always say that? So let me give you an example of what I mean. Mr. and Mrs., I'm just going to give them prayer. This book, just so you know, well, let me give you some background. The author of this book is Julia Watts Belzer. Okay? And she is a rabbi, she's a scholar, she's a spiritual teacher who works at the intersection of disability studies, queer, feminist, Jewish ethics, and environmental justice. And she is really passionate. She's a passionate wheelchair hiker, so she's in a wheelchair. So she's talking about disability justice and injustice, for that matter. And she's an avid gardener, and she's a lover of wild places, is what she says. But she is a person experiencing life in a wheelchair. So again, let's just assume that Miss Julia was dealing with mental health, like challenges. And here I come, preacher. I'm going to pray for Julia. Well, Julia says, prayer dogs me. Even when I'm living my ordinary lovely life, all the more so if I give some hint that I'm in need, prayer dogs me. She says once after surgery, recovering from a serious injury or illness, she said, I dealt with some things. She says for years after, people from the community would ask me, really soliciting, was I feeling all right? How was I doing? Did I need anything? Some of the things that I'm even sharing when considering mental health action, right? And they offered her prayer. She says, I'm not interested in those kinds of prayers. The kind that strip away my wheels and fashion me into an effortless strider. The Lord can get you out of that wheelchair, Julia. Let me pray for you. I know that mentally you are dealing with these things. Julia, let me pray for you. Lord, God is able to make you walk, Julia. I'm not interested in those kinds of prayers. The kind that strip away my wheels and fashion me into an effortless strider. But there's a different type of call, a call to action that I long for. So remember, the theme for this year's Mental Health Awareness Month is turning awareness into action. But what kind of action? We assume so many things. She says, there's a different kind of call, a call to action that I long for. So much of my disabled life has been shaped by physical architectural barriers, by the stairs that shut me out of scenic vistas and student lounges, by design that hasn't made a place for me. I hold that frustration. I hold in my heart the frustration. You can't enter. She says, but you can enter, but I cannot. That's the kind of prayer I'm looking for. I'm looking for the kind of prayer of solidarity that simultaneously, that's bold and practical. The kind of solidarity that refuses to accept unequal access as fixed and certain truth, that bears witness to the wrong and commits to the reconfiguring the facts of exclusion. The kind of solidarity that won't let go until we all cross over. And she talks about how the kind of prayer that she wants looks like how one of her friends, many years ago, she lived on a street that didn't have one of those she lived on a street without a curb cut, that small entry and exit ramp that lets wheelers and stroller pushers and delivery folk glide easily and seamlessly from sidewalk to street. She said that what looks like prayer to her was in that neighborhood. Her friends saw that there were folks out there came out to fix potholes. And in the midst of that, there was gravel. And her friends took shovels and they took that gravel and they put it, right there at that curb so that she could make a little ramp. They made a little ramp for her so that she could finally wheel free. That for her was support. So I just wanted to say that, as those of you who may be like me, who want to do really good work with everybody, we need to start to listen to everybody and not simply think that we already know. So while I'm talking about this, and I'm not done yet, no, I'm not done yet, as I'm talking about this, and I say to you, share or ask questions, that's what I mean. What is your experience, so that those of us who want to help you won't assume that we know what that help looks like? Mental Health Awareness Month looks very different for us when we consider turning the awareness into action. So, how do you provide support? Well, according to Julia, that's the way, her colleagues and her friends provided support for her. And now, she wasn't talking about it as a mental health issue. Hear me clearly. I'm simply saying that people have to live. She calls this book Loving Our Own Bones. People have to love their own bones, and they have to live in their own realities. And sometimes, if that's not your reality, you just place on them the type of support that you want them to have, then rather listen to the type of support that they need. So we could ask, how are you today? We could ask questions like, how can I best support you now? Is there something I can do that involves others? Because maybe what you need, I don't need to be present to do that. Maybe I need to resource something out. Maybe I don't look like the help that you need. And that's fine. When I was a hospital chaplain, that was the truth, because some people didn't want a woman. Some people didn't want a black woman. Some people didn't want a Protestant, minister. They wanted a Catholic priest. So do I take those things personally? No. I mean, I just realize that if I'm going to provide support, that may look like getting the person that they actually need. And I still provided support. You're not for everybody, and everybody's not for you, and you can't be everything to everybody. So you could ask, checking in on you. I'm always here to help. How can I help? Can I help you with the stuff you need to get done until you're feeling better? The fact is, you can really play an important role helping a friend or a loved one build positive social support, even if it's not directly you. And so you can check in regularly with people. Now, sometimes we can go a little overboard with that. Some people are more introverted, and they really just don't need us like that. It's nothing against us, against you, against me. They just don't need you like that. You can call and text and check on them once or twice a week. But then there are some people who are like, no, I'll call you. My people will call your people. I'll call you. Don't call me. But just let them know that you're there. That's very, very important. You can include them in plans. Even if you think that they're going to say no, you can still include them. Even if they don't want to come, always, you can still include them. That can be very important. And they can just feel appreciated that you even asked in the first place. So that you can do that. You can learn more about mental health conditions. If you listen to them and they give you information, then you can learn more without asking them so many questions, perhaps. Just learn more about mental health conditions. Find out more about your friend, what they're going through, so that you can better help even in the future. And then if they do want to talk about it, listen to what schizophrenia means for them. Because it may not be the same across the board. Listen to what anxiety is for them, because it's not the same across the board. Listen to what depression is to them, because it's not the same across the board. We don't even know what the triggers are and things like that. So we can learn more. And then avoid using, and I think I kind of spoke to this a little bit earlier, but avoid using judgmental and or dismissive language, such as, you'll get over it, toughen up, snap out of it, man up. Your friend needs to hear that they're not alone. They don't need to hear that they have to be superhuman. They don't need to hear that. And they don't necessarily need to hear that everything's going to be okay, because you don't know what being okay means to them. How do they define that? You may define everything's going to be okay, like, okay, using Julia, for example, if she got up out of that wheelchair, you assume now everything's okay, but that may not be what Julia feels. She may not think of being in a wheelchair as some ailment, to be pity, you know. No, so don't do that to people. Don't let them define their own experiences. And just because one part of the experience may pass, they may have another challenge waiting because that part of the experience passed. Yes, maybe the death of my loved one mentally is not disturbing me anymore. I understand. I have accepted that they're gone, but what's still here are the bills. So you think, woohoo, oh, she's all right, and so you use dismissive language like, God was able to get you through. I told you God was going to do it. But you don't realize that now there's a second tier to this that I must deal with. So again, just not thinking that we know someone's experience. And then the last thing I want to, as we close out this 2025 Mental Health Awareness Month, I want to talk a little bit about how do you make sure that you're okay too, even in the midst of providing all of these services and support to people, because I'm seeing more and more this increasing amount of people heading to social media, whether it be Instagram, TikTok, whether it's Facebook, and there's all these pity posts, for whatever it is that they do. And I just want you to know that there is a way for you to be able to make sure you're okay in ways that you don't pull on the broader community, because not everybody cares, about the fact that you're dealing with that or that your job is challenging, because theirs is too, and so when they read your pity post or they hear your pity videos, all those kinds of things, they're looking like, my goodness, if you can't hold it together, what's the hope for the rest of us? So now let's talk about how you make sure that you're okay. All right. The best way to be supportive is to make sure that you're in a good place yourself. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I want you to care for you even when other people don't. Because just because you lay pity out doesn't mean that people really, they may even respond in a way that seems that they are like, oh, and all that. But then they may go back and say things about you because you're not exhibiting a person who is able to manage their own life and manage those idiosyncrasies, in those tough times. You need to get you a real community of people that you feel support you. That's the first thing. A real community of people who support you. Social media I have nothing negative to say about social media or the people who use it. I'm just simply saying you need to get you some real people. And when you do need to feel pitied, those folks who really love you can understand, and they won't go talk about you behind your back after they've read your pity post, okay? So who are those people? Identify those people where you can make sure that you're really okay, because it's not always the broader community, okay? And then don't think that you can fix things yourself. You are an ally to other people, but you need to have allies as well. You need to have people who are not just about the broader community who doesn't care about you anyway, and not just people who do care about you but don't know what to do. You need some folks that can say, you know what, this is what we're going to do. And you need to have enough humility to say, you know what, I'm going to listen to you. Like if they say you need to sit down somewhere, I read what you typed, or I read or I heard what you said or whatever. You need to sit down somewhere. You need a break. You need people like that. And when you are trying to provide support, your role is to be supportive, but it's not your job to fix people. It's not your job to be the only one doing a thing. And you think about it, that's kind of like being pious anyway, because the only one who has all control and all power is God, not you in the first place. I read one post that somebody shared, and it said a good pastor it says something like a good pastor will do it all himself, but a good congregation won't let him do that. Let's say that to you again. It says something like a good pastor, and I thought I screenshotted it. I didn't know I would really share it, but I think it's important to share. It said a good pastor would do it all himself. Really? But a good congregation won't let him. Again, whatever your job is, and it's not just a pastor job, I'm just simply saying it is not your job to do everything, and that does not make you good. So when I read that post, I said being a martyr and sacrificing yourself doesn't help any of us. So it's a bad pastor does everything himself or herself or themselves. And a good congregation won't do everything themselves either. We are not God. Let's be reminded, okay? We're not God. It's not our job to fix every person. It's not our job to fix every problem, okay? And so in order to take care of yourself, you can't have that type of ideology that it makes you good to do everything yourself. No. Sacrifice. Jesus already sacrificed himself. You're not supposed to be doing that, okay? So just be real careful about that, especially if you're I'm talking from a Christian perspective now. Be real careful about being the sacrificial or the martyr. You know, that's not going to help any of us. We want you around, okay? Next, make sure you're patient. The recovery process takes time when supporting people dealing with mental health issues. It takes time, and you should be prepared for that. So that means that if you're going to be okay, you don't say, well, by next week, once I talk to him, by next week, that's going to be it. No, don't do that to yourself, okay? It's okay. Just be patient. And also make sure you set boundaries. It's okay to be specific about when you can and cannot be there. When you can and cannot be there. And don't accept abusive behavior. Don't accept violent behavior. And don't accept this idea of guilt and shame from people who expect for you to be God. From people who expect for you to be a martyr. And from people who expect for you to sacrifice like and be Jesus. Don't allow that. Set boundaries, okay? I have said before, I appreciate resourcing people out. I am not everything to everybody. I am what I am. And I'm happy about that. And then there's you. Maybe you're the person, to take them to the next place. I'm okay with that because, again, I know I'm not God and I'm not trying to be. So if they don't stop, being violent towards you, then you need to make sure that you do what's best for your health and for your safety. And in this season, God's people need to start discerning if where you are is where you need to be. Let me say that again. In this season, God's people need to start discerning if where you are is where you need to be. All right? Maybe you need to start thinking about other options. And then don't go at it alone. Like I said, involve other people. Try to find someone who might be understanding of your friend or your loved one's situation. And just know that, just like we say, it takes a village to raise a child. It also takes a village to support one another. And there's always the opportunity for them to pick up the phone and call 911. I've shared so many resources, how people can reach out and talk to counselors at any time. I think it was 988. I think I shared in one of these other gatherings. But do that. And then the last thing is simply don't give up. Don't give up. If somebody rejects you when you're trying to provide support, we're talking about turning awareness into action. It may be a defense mechanism. Sometimes people are just guarded in the moment, and it really has nothing to do with you. It's just from related traumas. They tried people before, networking and things like that before, and it just did not work out. But sticking by somebody that you care about shows them that you're in it, for the long haul. You're in this with them. All right. But again, not at the detriment of your own mental health. So I hope that this has been helpful. If you have any comments or questions, then please share them. What I'm about to do now is try to shut it on down so that I can get some more rest. I did get some rest, but I'm going to get some more. And just know that I'm in a discernment stage in my life right now. So if you see changes in me, whether you see me in person or online, then you're going to discover Dr. McCoy is making what I call mental health choices. She's making good mental health choices. All right. So if you keep on following me, you're going to see more of those choices. Some of you saw that I bought that little red car That little convertible top car. That's right. Yeah, it's not brand spanking new, but it's brand spanking new to me. It's a 2007. And I am just so happy about my mental health choice. So that means that when I get ready, I can take the top off of that little 2007 that somebody drove before, and now it's my turn. And when I get ready, I can ride my motorcycle and get me some wind therapy when I want to. Because you know what? This life, I'm going to die, but it's not going to kill me. Let me say it again. This life, I'm going to die, but it's not going to kill me. And then I flip that. You all are not going to kill me. You have to get to a point in your life where you can say that. Look here. Y'all are not going to kill me. I'm going to tell you that right now. So that's where I am in my life. And the problem with a lot of Christians is that we're not being honest about that. So I hope that you are, if you need to, in that discernment process like I am. Because, look, I need a shirt. Y'all ain't going to kill me. I love you. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm just so grateful for you. I'm going to go and try to get me some good rest and continue to serve, but I'm going to serve with Christ's confidence, Christ's care, and some good common sense. Have a good night. Take care of yourself.